Hello, I am an astral pilot. Now, since this is the third video I've made on this franchise, you can probably guess that I am a big fan of Pokémon. But even I have to admit that Pokémon games have been mid recently. Many people have not been satisfied with the most recent Pokémon titles, from Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl being considered bad remakes, to the endless amount of glitches found in Scarlet and Violet. Now, to be fair to Scarlet and Violet, if you ignore the visual glitches, Scarlet and Violet was probably the most fun I've had with the Pokémon games in a while. Going for an open-world approach with this game was a major improvement that this franchise needed. That being said, there are still so many problems that this game has, especially with the open-world aspects of the game, but I just couldn't figure out exactly what they were. Then, I found this little game called Cassette Beasts. This game took me by surprise. Now, don't get me wrong, when I first saw the trailer for it, I fully expected this to be a good game, and I was fully correct in that assumption. This game is incredible, and for anyone who dislikes the most recent Pokémon games, this is my official recommendation to just play it. But even if it was a good game, I didn't know what exactly I could talk about. For those who don't know, Cassette Beast is a monster collector similar to Pokémon, in which you use a cassette tape to record the monsters on the island of New World, allowing you to transform into these creatures in battle. To me, the only real thing I could talk about would be a review of the game, which I didn't really want to make, partially because of how long it takes for me to make these videos. Then I got to the actual game and, wait, what? This is an open world game? I didn't do much research into this game so as to not risk spoiling myself on something that I could enjoy. And I'm glad I didn't, because this moment right here was when I realized that this game was going to be great. And it was then I also had the topic for my next video. While again I had fun with Scarlet and Violet and Legends Arceus, to be honest I'm not entirely sure if Legends Arceus counts as an open world, so this video will mostly focus on Scarlet and Violet. There were still many problems I feel that these games had, especially with the main selling point, the open world, an aspect that Cassette Beasts took and blew it out of the water. But the why and how will be explored in this video today, as well as just me trying to get you to play this wonderful game. Before I can sell you on Cassette Beasts' open world, I first need to explain what mistakes Scarlet and Violet made when designing their open world. Now, the main purpose of an open world game is to make the player feel like the world has no restrictions. Most games, including this game, accomplish this by just making the map absolutely ginormous. They also just allow you to climb and crawl on any surface you see without restrictions, allowing the game to feel less like a cart stuck on rails. Now, I believe that Scarlet and Violet does this second thing very well, giving you a Koraidon or Miraidon, which essentially acts as a cart, making it somewhat fun to just run through the plains of Paldea. But there is also just a major problem in the map. Why? Because there's nothing to do. This is the first aspect that Cassette Beasts succeeded at where Pokémon failed, making their world feel alive, interactable. In Cassette Beasts, your character is given a clear goal. However, as you go through the game, more and more things crop up. More things pulling you in different directions. Side quests like finding a lost merchant, which opens up a shop you didn't have before. Finding hidden dungeons around the map, or completing puzzles that can open a chest or even lead to what could be classified as this game's legendaries. However, they also don't tell you exactly where your target is in some of these quests. However, they do nudge you in the right direction by giving you rumors if you talk to the townspeople. Compare that to Scarlet and Violet, where they give you an exact pinpoint of the gym leaders, the titans, and the team starbases. Even if you know where something is, there's a good chance that you won't know exactly what you're in for until you get there, because the map is basically blank at the start. That is something that I did find weird in Scarlet and Violet. Because in most open world games, they encourage you to explore by keeping the map blank, so you actually have to go there to know what is there. Not just look at the map and go, okay, here's the desert, there's a lake right here, mountains are over there. This makes it so you can be surprised when you get there and realize, wait, there's a dungeon up here? Sometimes I wouldn't even know that there was something somewhere, but I would get there anyway and be rewarded for doing so. This is in stark contrast to Pokémon Scarlet and Violet, where despite hammering in that you're allowed to do whatever you want in the intro, there are barely any side quests besides the 3 main ones that the game gives you. Now I will admit that Legends Arceus did have a plethora of side quests that made their town feel alive, but in Scarlet and Violet there was basically nothing. Now, I'm pretty sure there were some things in this game, like fighting trainers on specific routes to get rewards, as well as finding all the stakes to access the Ruinous Quartet legendaries. But that sort of brings me to my next point. While again, Scarlet and Violet does encourage you to explore and battle trainers by giving you rewards for finding trainers near Pokemon centers, I had mostly chosen not to engage with them because battling them would start to feel tedious. I think that this is both because the games refuse to give trainers more than like 2 Pokemon at max, meaning that battles last usually less than 30 seconds, but there's also the fact that if you do decide to fight them, this will give you enough XP to make any required battle extremely easy. So you're actually encouraged to stay away from most battles, since any battle that does not take place in quest line is an optional battle. To me, this makes it feel like Pokemon took 1 step forward and 2 steps back, because in previous games they were actually supported by not being open world. Because even if you fought a trainer who was easy, odds were that they were blocking a treasure or a path that you were required to go through to progress, making it still worth it. Cassette Beasts understood that and made the Rangers serve the exact same purpose, posting Rangers as places that you needed to pass through. That being said, it never felt like a chore to go through these battles as much as it does in Scarlet and Violet. This is possible thanks in part to how battles are structured. Mostly because unlike Pokemon, all battles in Cassette Beasts are double battles. Double battles are a terribly underutilized mechanic in Pokemon, and it works in Cassette Beasts' favor. These double battles allow you to diversify your strategy, having some monsters play support or tank or whatever. I'm not even going to talk about how I think the Cassette Beasts battle system is better in general. However, there are also some risks in actually getting into battle. The first being that unlike in basically any other RPG, Cassette Beasts heavily limits the amount of healing items you can carry. The upside being that you start with items that can fully heal yourself, but still, if you need a refill, then you have to travel all the way back to town. The second risk being that your character itself can take damage, meaning that if you're too reckless, you can risk dying without even going through all your beasts. In fact, this is how I lost most of my battles. These risks make every single battle have some sort of consequence or reward, not counting the actual reward you get from battling, which are more than just some version of Pokédollars. The last thing I want to talk about the battle system is the fusion mechanic, which makes even easy battles feel absolutely hype. It's hard to explain why exactly it does, but whether it's the cool ultimate attacks or more likely the amazing tracks that gain vocals upon transforming, it makes even the quickest battles feel worth it. Now, I'll admit that this might just be an entirely personal thing, because when I was young, despite it being the slogan for the franchise, I never felt encouraged to catch them all. I more so just stuck with the first 6 Pokemon I caught as my team for the entire game. Maybe just because I was connected to the team I had, or because I felt like random encounters would take too long. This is where I feel Scarlet and Violet did something right. I don't understand exactly why, but for this game specifically, I was way more encouraged to seek and catch as many as I could. My personal reasoning for this is because in more recent games they preferred having Pokemon actually appear in the overworld. So it's way cooler to travel and catch Pokemon when you actually get to see them in the wild. Cassette Beasts not only does this, But there are even more things they do in order to convince you to go out and fill your bestiary. First and foremost being the sticker system. In Cassette Beasts, moves and abilities can be taken off of your monsters and applied to other monsters. So even if you never use a particular monster, you still want to catch as many as you can just so you can apply their abilities to your main team. Heck, even the way you get traversal abilities encourages you to catch the monsters in this game. Like I said earlier in this video, open world games have very little restrictions on where you can be in the world. Usually this means you can climb any wall, swim in the ocean, and in some cases fly any place you want. This game makes you think there are restrictions in the world. When this game starts, you have very few things you can use to traverse the world, and you're stuck to the main paths like any RPG. But then you encounter Dominoth for the first time, and you learn that by catching certain beasts, you gain their abilities, with Dominoth giving you the ability to glide. Now, there are only a handful of them, and not all of them are required, but what this means is that you're encouraged to go out and look for them just in case they do give you something special, especially since one of them is essentially a legendary Pokémon. Now, for anyone who has been watching the previous parts of this video but still haven't played Cassette Beasts, be warned that beyond this point there will be major spoilers for this game, and I highly recommend that you play it before continuing on. Consider the previous parts as reasons why I believe you should play it, my official recommendation to you. Everyone who played it still here? Good. From this point on, I just want to talk about things that Cassette Beasts does that I don't think will be fair to compare to Pokémon. Either because Pokémon doesn't try to be the things Cassette Beasts tries to be, or because they're minor nitpicks to Cassette Beasts because while I do like this game, there are flaws with it. First off are rogue fusions. For the people who have played recent Pokémon games, rogue fusions are sort of like raided ends in recent titles. Down to them containing the gimmick of the game, in this case, fusions. Fusion is probably the most requested gameplay feature I've heard for Pokémon besides just bringing back Mega Evolutions, or just elaborating on Synchro Evolutions because seriously Game Freak, why does Ash have a Greninja that can turn into him, and why is it never applied to any other Pokémon besides Greninja? But anyway, while fusions are heavily requested, it was always more considered a pipe dream, mostly because of just how many of them would be needed. As of writing this script, there are currently 1,010 Pokémon. That means there would need to be at least 1,020,100 unique combinations, if each Pokémon was able to use this gimmick. But Cassette Beast was able to cheat the system by making the fusions essentially dolls. Each monster has some parts for the fusion, and depending on who they fuse with, they can mix and match their parts, making this workload much easier but still delivering amazing creature designs. You can also encounter fusions in the wild, known as rogue fusions, who basically act as world bosses. I personally really like the way that Cassette Beasts handles it, because if you see a monster that makes a cool fusion, you're encouraged to catch it so you can add it to your party and you can make your own cool fusion. It essentially works the same in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, where instead you get a special Pokemon with a special ability to change their type. This is a good enough reason to catch them. They even make it so it's a confirmed capture if you do defeat them. The only reason I don't like it is mostly because of online, and you don't just get to go directly into the battle like Cassette Beasts. The second thing that I like that would be unfair to compare to Pokemon are the Archangels, one of the types of bosses in the game. The reason I find it unfair is because they are way more serious than anything Pokemon has tried to be. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I could probably do a whole video on the topic alone, but they're essentially godly characters done right. They're characters that make even you, the player, think you're witnessing something incomprehensible. Most of this is thanks to the fact they're not in the art style of the rest of the game. They can range from 3D graphics to collages to one of my personal favorites, the Nowhere Monarch, who is in some sort of rubber hose cartoon style. It makes it so that each time you see them you think, "Huh, Christ! Ah, what is that? Ah, fuck! Christ! Fuck!" Fun fact, I'm pretty sure the first Archangel you're supposed to fight is this stop-motion one named Papatox, but I skipped them because I didn't know I had an item to actually fight them. So the first one I fought was this one in an actual cult, and they're all like worshipping this snake god. And because this is my first actual Archangel fight and I don't know their shtick, and I see that they dug up this subway tunnel, I assume that their snake god is the train. So I go down to fight it, and oh my god. Let me just say this. This game threw me for a loop when I saw this angelic figure who has a move called Temptation that spawns an apple tree, and is straight up called Morning Star, vaporize a man right in front of me, and then tell me that I have to fight them next. Honestly, I'm glad that I was stupid enough to walk by Papa Tux, because this Archangel was the perfect introduction to the game. Finally, I want to talk about the few flaws that this game has, because yes, there are some flaws. Mostly quality of life issues. Stuff like the game needing to load whenever you go from one side of the map to the other, which is especially annoying, since the only town in the game is right in the middle of the map, so if you're walking through town, the game will just stop. There's also the issue of the party menu. I found it slightly annoying to change out companions, because I'd have to put one monster in storage, take a monster I don't want, give it to my companion, and then once I change out my companion, give them the monster I actually want to have on my team. But the most wasted opportunity is one character specifically, and that is Eugene. For those who haven't played this game, in Cassette Beasts you travel with a companion, you have multiple that you encounter throughout the game, and most of them are pretty good. And then there is Eugene. So let me explain why I find Eugene wasted potential. Eugene is your second companion that you encounter in the game, so you get them pretty early on. He then gives you a mission to take out what is essentially the Team Rocket of this game. So far so good, right? Well, there are three choices that this game makes that I just find so baffling about Eugene. The biggest one being this. You know how I praised Fusion? Well, you don't unlock Fusion with a specific character until you complete the mission. And in order to complete Eugene's mission, you need to travel the entire map so you can find all the evil team bases. Just to put in perspective how bad it is, the final boss of the game is level 57. And the boss you need to fight in order to unlock the ability to fuse with Eugene is level 44. Meaning that by the time Eugene is actually usable, you are already 4/5 through the main game. And you get him near the start. That's already bad, but you know what's worse? For essentially every other character, you are forced to use that character to complete their mission, which is understandable. But for Eugene, you only need to use him for the final boss fight for his mission. You can use whatever other character you want to do his mission, and there would have been a good reason to include him because he stole a key for the bases which allows you access, but he just gives it to you. You could have made it so you needed to use him for these fights in the bases to make it a little extra challenging. You're already incentivized not to use him in his own story missions, making it so when you actually finally fight the Archangel and he starts trying to get into Eugene's head, it makes it a lot less impactful because the game doesn't give you much characterization about him, because you don't unlock the ability to have a relationship with him until you complete his quest. Despite my complaints, I still think this game is one of the best games I've played in a while, and I can't wait for the DLC. That's all from me. Please like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe so you don't miss the next. Comment what your thoughts on this game are. Do you think that Cassette Beasts did better or worse than Pokémon? I worked really hard on this video especially, so please share it with your friends if you enjoyed it, and also just as a recommendation to Cassette Beasts. This game deserves it. Thank you, and I hope you have a nice day.